If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With the all-new Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from good to excellent. Introducing the new Sleep Score on Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal podcast. I'm entertainer and writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, who longtime listeners to this podcast know was among the very first people to get into the Epic Universe back in the annual pass holder previews, right?
Yeah, it was the first day that was non-team members, and I was actually watching the Epic Ride, the documentary that came out on Peacock, and I've watched it probably 3 times now. It's it's very good. But they actually showcased the first day where there's paid. So they actually, and I'm always looking in there. I'm like, do I see any of my kids? I don't think I've spotted, but they do have footage of that. Yeah, but Jim, you, my friend, are fresh off your first experience with Epic.
Finally, yes. This past week, flew down to Orlando, was there with Mr. Testa and Mr. Schul, mostly for IAAPA, which is the themed entertainment Super Bowl. But while I was there, I got to attend an after-hours party at Epic Universe. They mostly kept us in Burke. But I did get to ride Stardust Racers, and
at nighttime.
At night, and
beautiful.
Yeah, never riding that again. I
had a feeling with your Velocicoaster story before, it's like one and done. I had a feeling, but I didn't want to say anything ahead of time.
Well, and then we got Mr. Schul and I 2 days later got into Epic during the day, and ironically enough, we got a relatively short day in Epic because we were being chased out of the park for yet another party for IAAPA. But anyway, not to be a tease, folks, but this is an amazing park. It's beautiful. It's ambitious. It deserves a full show. So that's what Eric and Lauren and I have decided to do. Sometime, I guess, in December, the 3 of us are going to sit down and record a show about my impressions of Epic Universe and contrast those again with the Hersey's experience, because, again, they were in their first day of the annual pass holder preview. But yeah, look for that show next month. But for now, lots of other news. I was there on the first day of the holidays at the Universal Orlando Resort, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But before we do that, we, of course, have to acknowledge our sponsor. And the Epic Universal podcast is brought to you by unlockmagic.com. That's also our friends at DVC Rental Store. And this holiday season is the ideal time to check out unlockmagic.com for both regular Disney theme park tickets and discounted tickets for after-hours special events. You can save 10% on experiences like Mickey's Very Merry, though as I understand that that's gone clean for this year. There might still be...
Is it? I know November was sold out.
Well, Mr. Testa, effectively say, gone clean, thanks for playing, come back in 2026. Jollywood Nights might still have some tickets available. Anyway, so head on over to unlockmagic.com and lock in your winter admissions while these deals are still available. Okay, so and again, if you've been paying attention to this podcast at all, you understand that we have a contractual obligation to talk about Wicked for Good. We've been doing it every show for like 3 months now, and now the film is finally out in theaters, and it looks like all of Universal's hard work has paid off. Kind of an astounding opening weekend, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, Jim. I I'm looking at it a couple different ways. I've seen, I have not yet seen it. My family did.
Mm-hmm.
I think the girls saw it the day before. They managed to get one of those like Amazon Prime deals or whatever, and they saw it the day before it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe they were going to go see it again this week. So they're fans.
Okay.
I will wait a little bit longer to make sure that there's not crowds full of people. And I'm assuming, Jim, you haven't had time to see it yet, correct?
No. In fact, if I'm being completely honest here, I haven't seen the first one yet. So, just
wow.
I have
Listen.
to, I'm conversant. In fact, I have been, I think, showing great restraint, not spoiling the end for your bride or your daughter.
Or me, for that matter,
well,
Jim.
There we go. Okay.
Right, because you know of it. You saw it on Broadway at some point in time.
I did.
Okay.
And, and again, very much looking forward to doing it. It's just that, you do 6 podcasts a week, it's just sort of like you rarely leave the house. But anyway, let's talk about how this did over its opening weekend.
Well, it said it was even bigger. Mm-hmm. It was 147 million domestically and 223 million globally on its weekend. So it surpassed the first film's debut numbers. Mm-hmm. So that is, that is the kind of news that they wanted to hear and that they were hoping for. And there was huge, advertising campaign for that. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a doubt that it was going to be huge from opening weekend. It's great that it did better. Mm-hmm. I guess the word on the street is that maybe not so for good compared to the first one. I think the critics and fans might have not said it's not as good as the first one. Did you hear that as well?
The interesting thing is that last year, right up until when the movie was released, critics were grousing about, they took the Broadway show and turned it into 2 films. And then the movie came out, the first one came out and everybody loved it. And so, everyone sort of backed off on that. But what's interesting is to watch the critics revisiting that same, sort of, they broke it into 2 films. And the problem here is that the second act of Wicked doesn't have as good songs. I mean, the story's a little bit of a downer. Not to spoil it, but that's, again, it's the second act of a show, and there's a lot of story to cover, and so it was just interesting to watch the critics knock it that way. On the other hand, even past its opening weekend, it's still chugging along at the box office, Eric. I went over to Box Office Mojo just before we get started here. Still sold well on Monday, Tuesday. This is Wednesday when we're recording. Right now, Wicked for Good in North America stands at 177 million domestic, 76 overseas. Eric, that's $250 million in less than a week. And, it's just, so I'm sure up in the Black Tower, the critics, they were mean to us about, let me wipe the tears from my eyes with this packet of $100 bills. All right.
That's what I was going to say. I think they made the right decision when it comes to breaking it into 2 movies. Mm-hmm. Yes. And I was seeing the same things you were, Jim, that everybody online was like, hey, what do you expect? The second act isn't as good as the first act. Mm-hmm. When you put it together, it's great. Yep. And I think they were smart and making 2 movies. And I know they're kind of, like you said, crying their way with those, wiping their tears with the buddy. But I guess, Jim, what's your thoughts? I've heard a couple inklings that there could be a third movie, like a prequel. That may be the. I've heard a little bit of that, but I don't know if it's verified sources or just like rumblings.
Well, now remember, on last week's show, we talked about the Sabrina Carpenter Alice in Wonderland project. I think that's a priority for now. I will say this much. Bringing Oz into the Universal theme parks has been turbocharged. But again, the problem is which park, where, and when. And, to be honest, what I keep hearing is the folks at Universal would like to wait till March to see if, there's been a lot of talk just recently about this time around, for example, an Academy Award for Ariana Grande as Galinda. Also, remember the last film I wanted to say he made, but a 778,
Right.
million worldwide. If this thing, and again, $250 million in 6 days, if it continues to chug and it blows through a billion, we may hear some news next year about Wicked coming into the parks. But
Right.
for now, got to get to March, the Academy Awards, and see what happens. So, and speaking of
Right.
awards, though, you also have some news about how well the Universal theme parks did at the Theas this year.
Yeah, I think you guys were down there. I don't know where the Theas are actually held, but it was ultimately. Do you know, Jim, where they're holding? Is it virtual?
No, I actually attended it.
No way.
Yeah, it was actually a part of that after-hours party I was describing in the Isle of Berk. In fact, the award ceremony was held in the same theater where the Untrainable Dragon show was presented.
Oh,
so
well, that's funny. Well, Jim, so there had to be thunderous applaud when they announced that the best land was indeed the Isle of Berk, right?
Yeah. And that was what was kind of funny. The people walking in, it's like, yep, I get it. Okay,
Yeah.
Though what was interesting, that one for best theme park land. On the other hand, Monsters Unchained: The Frankenstein Experiment, that took best attraction. Where kind of an interesting bend on this, there was a different ride, different category, a ride experience. And Harry Potter and the Battle for the Ministry took that award. And finally, best theme park for all of 2026. Surprise, surprise. That was Epic Universe.
Right.
So,
yeah. So that they, I mean, I looked at all the list, and for the most part, they did. I mean, it was obvious that they swept this. I guess this was created. Was it 1994? Did I look that up right? It's an older thing. Yeah, 1994 was the Thea Awards. So I wonder if does the new theme parks always kind of come away and win that year? I didn't go back and look to see at 99 or 98. Like, did Animal Kingdom win everything?
Well, that's an interesting thing there. Typically the big corporate parks, because of the size of the investment, they do get some love. What's nice about the Theas, though, is they honor everything from small museum exhibits to traveling. They touch all aspects of the industry. So everybody gets some love. But that's, I think, what was fascinating at the end, when the big four came up and it was like Universal. It was like, it was kind of like, whoa, now mind you, when you invest as much as Universal, and that's the other thing, that this is the first time I heard the number. Evidently, if you factor in Helios and Stella Nova and Terra Luna, $7 billion. Spent.
Is that a record itself? Is that an award as well? The most?
That's up there.
I'd love to see what the adjusted number from Epcot, because I knew that was ridiculous in '80s. But
that was. One other thing before we move on here, did want to mention that, in addition to these 4 awards for Epic Universe and its attractions, Dale Mason, the retired VP and executive art director for Universal Destinations and Experience, he received the Buzz Price Award, honoring a lifetime of working in themed entertainment. And I've been lucky a couple of times in the past, Eric, to interview Dale.
Oh, great!
In fact, I remember talking with him. Standing there in the dirt, when Diagon Alley was still coming up out of the ground. And Dale is a great guy. He has an amazing resume. I mean, if you enjoy The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, riding in your scoop vehicle, that's Dale. If you remember the water vortex from Poseidon's Fury, also
Dale.
Just a great guy, and more to the point, to receive the Buzz Prize Award. Very, very, deserved, a great guy. And just what was lovely is that when they announced it first, all of his Universal peers who were seated around him stood up and applauded. And then the rest
great.
of the room stood up as well. It was just, they recognized all the great work that Dale had done over time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'll tell you what, so not to mention again that watching the Epic Ride, I was jotting down names because I think one thing about the Universal Creative is over the years, Disney has had so many documentaries, and all these Imagineer names, and the people behind the scenes, and you write this stuff down and you see it. But Universal is really nice to see a lot of their people come forward.
Yes.
And I was writing all their names down. I'm like, I want to see who these people are. And it's like to see something like Dale Mason, then research him and then find out the stuff that he's done. That's really awesome. So I hope they continue. Not just, obviously these awards and stuff, they're always going to give a Buzz Price Award, but I really think that a lot of the people that's built some of these Universal parks over the years are going to start getting their love, and I really appreciate seeing that kind of stuff. Hopefully on this show, we can continue to give some love to them as well.
Yeah, no. Would love to get Dale here on the show to chat about his career. Let's see if we can make that happen. Anyway, though, again, this happened inside of Epic Universe in the theater for the Untrainable Dragon, though based on what we've been hearing, that there may be another theater or something built in.
Jim, there was so much news while you're gone. Plus, we got so much to talk about with your impressions of Epic and the holidays and so forth. But this was one that I was like, we got to talk about this now because it was kind of, I think November 7th, there was a construction permit filed for site utilities and foundation work, new construction for a 150,000 square foot building inside Epic Universe. So, and it was kind of confirmed, not necessarily what it is, but they did, the VP of Public Relations did say, we're preparing for some exciting additions. We kind of knew that coming along. But the facts, it's coming. There is something that's going on, and I think there's some speculations, but it sounds to me, for all those online that kind of does the maps and figure it out, they're thinking it's going to be in the Ministry of Magic area. Is that what you're hearing or seeing? 150 that's bigger than like the Rise of the Resistance ride. It's about the equivalent of maybe like the Battle of the Ministry land. So that's a big freaking attraction.
Yeah, and what was interesting on the IAAPA floor is this is what kept happening over and over again. People would mention that construction, and then they'd go, "Oh, the broom ride," and then they go,
that's what I heard."
And then it was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." It was suddenly like Hagrid, "Oh, shouldn't have said that." So it was kind of interesting. Nobody's officially announced anything, but a lot of people seem to know what's going on. And then immediately, you didn't hear that from me. I'm going to walk over here. No, leave me alone.
Well, I looked it online and I wasn't there. So the fact is, nobody told you anything.
Yep.
I'm the one that brought it up.
There we go. There we go.
All right. Well, Jim, speaking of Harry Potter and things that most people probably shouldn't tell me, as a giant coffee fan myself, did you see that Harry Potter and Coffee Mate released a butterbeer coffee creamer?
Oh, dear Lord. What's so funny is I just recorded a brand new I Want That Too with your lovely bride, Lauren, and she and Lainey. And in fact, I guess Chris Cox from the Case 4 all went together to the Harry Potter store in Times Square, which also sells butterbeer. But again, what's fascinating for me now is, okay, we have Coffee Mate creating a way to make your coffee butterbeer flavored. We have, of course, the various versions of butterbeer that are served at the Universal parks. But again, this Warner Brothers, this is a store by Warner Brothers in Times Square. And evidently they have their own version of butterbeer, which your bride said was just a teeny bit different than the stuff that was served in the parks. And I bring this up because when we were at IAAPA, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking the name of the gentleman who shared this with me, but he was talking about the Harry Potter studio tour attraction over in the UK. And evidently they serve butterbeer as well. But what's interesting is they're about to begin serving butterbeer flights.
Oh, really? Different little, yeah.
So the notion is that you go to the commissary of the restaurant there, and what they will do if you order the butterbeer flight is you get classic butterbeer in a cup, you get a scoop of butterbeer ice cream, and a butterbeer flavored cookie. So, and again, as the diabetic, I'm here literally forming the cross because it's like, I can't ever have that. But, but if we ever get you over to the UK, I would love to get your thoughts on that. But,
well, yeah, no, I mean, that's been it's starting to become somewhat my brand. Anything that's butterbeer, I get people sending me stuff through Instagram and Twitter and so forth, and continue on. Please send me all that stuff. But it looks like there was actually another release though that prior to, they did like a toffee cauldron cake and a white chocolate peppermint toad creamer before. So this isn't the first time that Harry Potter and Coffee Mate has done that. And I guess this will start probably later next month.
Okay.
And nationwide, I think it goes in January. So it's going to be roughly about $5 for 28-ounce creamers. And I guess they're about $6 for 14-ounce cold foam. So I'm going to try it and I'll report back.
Okay. Well, I will look in at it through the case when I go to Target, and just sort of. But anyway, we have more news, folks. But before we get to that, got to take a moment here for some ads. So, but we'll be back in a sec.
Hello, I'm Chris Cox, and I've teamed up with Len Tester to argue before our judge, Jim Hill, as he presides over us on our new podcast, The Case For with Chris Cox. In every episode, Len and I will argue about the big Disney debates like park hopping, early entry, and whether churros count as a food group. Whether you're planning a trip or just love Disney debates, it's the perfect podcast for you. Search The Case For with Chris Cox wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Ulta Beauty. Holiday cheer is here, and Ulta Beauty has gifts for everyone on your list. Treat them to fan-favorite gift sets from Charlotte Tilbury and Peach and Lily. Go all out with timeless fragrances from YSL, Ariana Grande, and Carolina Herrera. And you can never go wrong with an Ulta Beauty gift card. Head to Ulta Beauty for gifts that make the holidays brighter and even more beautiful. Ulta Beauty. Gifting happens here.
With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels. On everything from lamps to ceiling fans. Even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox disinfecting wipes, now available in crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox, clean feels good.
And we're back. Okay, at the top of the show today, I mentioned that when I visited, Universal Studios Florida and Islands Adventure on Friday, what is the Friday the 20th, I guess, or the 21st.
Right.
This was the very first day of Universal or holidays at the Universal Orlando Resort. And, and the parks were all dolled up, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but they're also doing the same sort of thing on the West Coast, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I mean, we all know this. They start Halloween early and then they start Christmas early. So you just get nice ramp up. But they've already started over in Hollywood. So it was around the same time frame. I don't know exact dates, but I did remember because we started getting pictures of the Wicked tree that was out in front of City Walk. And I don't know if you saw this, but of course, part of the big promotion. So on the 21st was when Wicked came out. So of course, they're going to promote that on both coasts. But they did have a giant Wicked for Good themed Christmas tree over at City Walk in Hollywood with a glowing green W.
Okay.
And of course, a Glinda inspired star topper. But yeah, they're festive over there. And I don't know if you've seen any of the Hollywood stuff, but I guess there's, King Kong. There's a giant King Kong sign. I guess he's wearing his
neon sign has been part of Universal City Walk since opening 93, 94. So they got that decorated too.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was one of the first things. I'm excited to see that. And when I go out there, hopefully one time during the holidays. But Jim, I got a question. Have you been out there during the holidays? Have you been at Hollywood for the holidays to see kind of their Whoville?
Well,
because I think it's different.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out there for Grinchmas, and they do the wonky Christmas tree on the upper lot in now, mind you, this was before the makeover of Universal Plaza, so I'd be fascinated to get there today to check that out. But yeah, but it's not just Grinchmas they're doing there. They're also Potter does some holiday theming as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks. We were fortunate enough to be in Florida last year, so I got to experience how holidays are at these parks. So it's nice that they give every land a little bit of a touch, right? So you have things like at Hogsmeade, you have pine cone and berry garlands, and house themed ribbons. And truth be told, it was always funny because the last couple of times we went to Universal, it was like 90-degree weather, and you walk back into Hogsmeade, and you're like, oh, it's very Christmassy back here still. So it's really kind of magical to actually have it Christmas, because every Potter film, it seemed like there was Christmas going on. So it is kind of like, if I'm going to say there's an area that is magical, with no pun intended, from a Christmas standpoint, the Hogsmeade areas are great. But I remember last year, Super Mario World or Super Nintendo World, they had trees and they were all, I think there was like snowmen that were kind of cartoony.
Yeah, so. I want to say this year, though, they're sort of upping the ante in that portion of the park, which is why it's worth it to make your way down the Starway.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I can tell you, having been in Super Nintendo World at Epic Universe, not so much there. I mean, what was kind of interesting about Epic was that Christmas, there was Christmas to the front of the park through the Celestial Park. Likewise, there was Christmas going on in the Ministry of Magic, but again, a sophisticated Parisian of the 1920s version of Christmas, as opposed to what goes on in Diagon Alley and Hogsmeade. But on the other hand, if you went to Toon Lagoon or if you went to Marvel Superhero Island, there was really no Christmas out in the streets. But if you wandered into shops, they'd have Christmas. In fact, I thought it was a lovely detail in Marvel Superhero Island that the stores had the green bulbs were like double the size and Hulk colored. Just sort of like, okay,
that's pretty great.
Yeah, that's it. Some art director making, gonna make a good choice there.
No, that's pretty classic. But before we head to Florida, did you see hear anything about Fast and Furious? I know that's getting real close to opening,
yeah,
right? Or at least we think.
No, they are definitely testing that thing now. Kind of interesting. Everyone who's been observing this so far has noted that the coaster cars themselves are still locked into place. And what's especially interesting is supposedly what Universal is doing is running the coaster, but also they have people on the street around the theme park, around Universal Hollywood, trying to get a sense of, okay, where are we already with the noise level? Because again, remember, that they have to please their neighbors, because very soon this thing is actually going to get turned on, and there's a soundtrack, there are noises, and so it's like they're trying to evidently establish a baseline for, okay, what's our noise level before we do that. And then, very carefully as they march through the late winter, early spring of 2026, get a sense of, okay, now the cars are spinning. Now we've turned on the soundtrack. Are we upsetting the people in Toluca Lake? So we will see. We will see.
Yeah. No. Well, all right. Well, let's go over to let's go over to Orlando. So you just witnessed. So you got to go to the multiple. Do you go to all 3 parks this trip?
I did. And again, we did Epic Universe on Thursday, and then went over and did Islands and Universal Classic, the studios, on Friday, and it took all of my self-control to get through the tribute store without buying something.
I was going to ask you about that tribute store. Listen, let's skip right to the tribute store, because I'm all about it. So what is it? Because I saw footage be like somebody shooting it from the outside. What is it themed this year?
Well, it's obviously leaning. Well, first of all, right next to the entrance is your meet and greet with Earl the Squirrel.
Did you get to meet Earl?
I saw Earl.
Okay,
but
right. I know you're in and out. You had a lot to do. I get it.
Well, that was the thing. We were running and gunning, and for example, when we were at Wicked the Experience, the store right at the top of Hollywood Boulevard, there were already people in line for the Glinda Elphaba meet and greet, but that wasn't going to start, I guess, till 9:30, 10 in the morning, and we were, chugging along. But Earl was right out there. But again, I had 2 parks worth of holiday decorations to check out, so I waved to my rodent friend and then went in. And what's lovely about the tribute store this year is they really leaned into the whole Nutcracker thing, but it's Nutcrackers like you've never seen them before. I mean, giant Frankenstein, themed Nutcrackers, or your favorite Creature from Black Lagoon even got a Nutcracker.
Oh, good.
But there was a what was it? A Grinch room. There was in fact, the popcorn bucket for the holiday season, which has a minion riding on, a fluffy unicorn. It's just sort of like, that was one of those, it's like, be strong, Jim. That again, you came out here with a suitcase that weighed 38 pounds to begin with, and you don't want to get that extra, get that extra baggage fee. So it was like, leave that alone. But they had. They had killer, ugly Christmas sweaters of Back to the Future and Jaws.
Yes. I saw those. Those looked amazing. That would have been the one. I was like, all right, well, how many more pounds do I got? How much is a sweater? Like, how many can I wear?
Yeah.
Because I don't think they weigh you when you get on the plane.
No.
Sir, why are you sweating so bad?
There we go. And it was just one of these things where it's like, no, be strong, keep moving. But
and it's on Hollywood, right? Last year it was in the back in like New York area. But it's back.
It was. And what's interesting is that I want to say when Mr. Schul and I came out in 2023. This is also where the tribute store was. Next to Schwab's, or in where Schwab's
around there, that area. Yeah.
Yeah, but they had great food items. They had lovely nods to attractions that were no longer there. In fact, lots of photos where Earl the Squirrel had been comped into. I'm riding Jaws. They did a wonderful job. But that's the thing. Universal always does when it comes to the holidays. I mean, for example, going through King's Cross Station to take the Hogwarts Express, over to Hogsmeade Village. they were, you knew it was Christmas in London because on all the luggage carts, scattered in among the suitcases and trunks were wrapped Christmas presents.
Yeah.
No, it's just that they did a lovely job, and and just all the way through. Now, if I had the time, the Universal Holiday Tour, I think. Now, mind you, it's only offered during the day, but on the other hand, it actually starts off. And the what is it? Club Coconut, the red coconut. That's your check.
Oh yeah,
your check-in point for the tour. And but you start there. I want to say check in at noon, and by the time your experience ends, by the way, you have primo viewing space for the Macy's parade they do in the park. Again, you get to meet the Grinch, you get to meet Santa, you get taken behind the scenes, all that for, 6-hour long experience for $89. But you get to experience, the holidays at Universal full on.
Well, and I mean, I know you were rushed for time, so there's not a chance you met the Grinch, because you would have been able to do nothing else.
Yeah.
So like the money alone for this, and you can do right now. I think they have the Grinch breakfast character and friends, which is, I believe, you get to eat. Is it at? It's at Circus Circus, right?
Again, the home office of the Hersey family. Whenever they're their favorite restaurant,
chicken and waffles, and but you can do that breakfast experience, and that's $58.99. But that's just meeting the Grinch. So for $89.99 per person, like you're saying, you get to meet the Grinch, and you get to meet Max. You get to meet Santa. You get the Grinch. You get to the premium seating for the Hula Day special, and you also get to watch the Macy's parade along with snacks, beverages. I don't know. I think it's worth forking out the money for that if you are trying to really get it all in.
I would agree, and more to the point, to start your day that way, over in Seuss's Landing and have breakfast with the Grinch, and then come out and experience Seuss's Landing, where, the holidays are at 11. I mean, for example, while I was there, I was marveling at the forest of the truffula trees around the Lorax, and every single one of those was decorated and wrapped in bunting, and it was like they just don't miss a trick.
And there's Who's everywhere, right? I mean, did you get to experience when we were there last year? Which I don't think, from what I read and so forth, there are some like newer experiences, but not a tremendous amount. So I knew there were Who's there last year, but what is different this year?
Well, interesting you mentioned that, because I'm literally standing there with my friend Angela Ragno, who was nice enough to come out with me for the day. And in fact, we were being led around the park by my pal Shelley Karen, and who knows Universal, inside and out. And we're standing there, in fact, at the Lorax's house, when coming out from backstage are 4 team members in, again, it's 80 degrees out, Eric. All right. And they're in heavy winter coats and scarves and hats. And they're also wearing the Who makeup. And God love them. They're nodding, they're smiling, they're waving. And I know, wearing that much latex and that heavy a coat in Florida heat, they're dying, and they've just come on stage, and they're going to be out for, at least a half hour meeting and greeting with folks. I mean, it's that crazy level of dedication that you have to applaud. And by the way, speaking of, again, you got to remember, the version of Grinchmas that we get at the Universal parks these days keys off of the Ron Howard movie that came out in the year 2000, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which of course stars Jim Carrey, celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And when Eric and I get back from this break, we're going to talk about how that movie came to be, and more to the point, what poor Jim Carrey went through for 92 days when they were shooting this thing. So, but before we do that, there's this.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. Black Friday Game Day on Prime is an epic day of live sports. It all starts at 9 a.m. Eastern with the Capital One Skins game. Then, Black Friday football returns when the Bears take on the Eagles at 3 p.m. And it culminates with the final night of Emirates NBA Cup Group play with Bucks Knicks at 7 p.m. and Mavs Lakers at 10 p.m. Black Friday Game Day, only on Prime.
Popeye's Scary Good new Freddy Fazbear Box has garlic palm tenders and cheesy bites with marinara sauce. Try it before it's too late. And see Five Nights at Freddy's 2, only in theaters. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Blink Friday starts now with up to 65% off Blink Smart Security. Check on your pets all season long with new Blink Mini 2K Plus cameras. See your gifts arrive in head-to-toe view with Blink Video Doorbell. Ready to use right out of the box. Just unwrap Blink and go. From pet parents to jet setters to busy families, Blink Friday deals have your holidays covered. Shop now at amazon.com/blink.
And we're back. So, Eric, I have to ask, you've seen the Jim Carrey?
Yeah, it's been a few years, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, now, important to stress here, in the end, an enormous success. I mean, it was a big investment on Universal's part. I want to say they spent 150 million on this thing. It went on to sell 400 million worth of tickets worldwide. It was the top grossing film domestically for that entire year.
Oh, wow.
Sixth highest grossing film worldwide. And just to put it in perspective, only Home Alone has grossed more as a holiday film. So a huge success. But an interesting story as to how we actually got this film. And of course, just as starters, based on How the Grinch Stole Christmas, a picture book came out in 1957. There are certain elements from the 1966 holiday special, like You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, the song, included in this thing. But how this came together, again, fascinating tale, Eric, because Dr. Seuss, he turned Hollywood down a lot when they came calling and said, we want to make a movie on one of your books. Now, what's interesting is I'm talking about the big Hollywood studios, whereas those holiday specials, or the Cat in the Hat special, or even the Lorax special, well, what was different about those is Theodore Geisel, and that's Dr. Seuss's real name, he worked with Warner Brothers back in the 40s. In fact, there's a Horton Hears a Who, wonderful short that was done by Warner Brothers. But he worked, personally with guys like Chuck Jones and David DePatie and Friz Freleng. And so when they came to him and said, hey, we want to do a TV special, it's like, well, I know you. I like you. You've been my friend for decades. Sure, we'll do that. Whereas when the slick young guys from Hollywood come, it's like, yeah, leave me alone. They travel out to La Jolla, they'd make the pitch, and they'd go away empty-handed. But Geisel dies September of 1991 at the age of 87. Theodore's widow, Audrey Geisel, very different animal, Eric. She begins licensing the Seuss characters in the early 1990s. And we've actually talked about on this podcast, the master licensing deal for us that brought about Seuss's Landing back in 94. But here's the thing. July of 1998, Audrey's agent puts the word out in Hollywood that The film rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas are about to be auctioned off.
Is that normal? Like an auction for that? I've never heard.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of projects in Hollywood do end up like this.
Huh.
A book will be done in galley form, and they'll make it available to a number of the heads of the studio, and then let them know, look, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be putting this out to bid. And it's always interesting to see who steps up. Now, got to say, going into this auction, Audrey was already laying down some pretty tough terms. I mean, even before the movie would be made, once the auction was completed, the Seuss estate was to be awarded $5 million up front.
Right.
And then once the movie was actually made, the Seuss estate was to be cut into 4% of all box office receipts. They were also then supposed to get 50% of any merchandising revenue related to the film.
Wow.
And then 70% of any book tie-ins and the movie soundtrack.
Oh, that's not a bad. I mean, that's a heck of a deal, I think, right?
Well,
because I mean, Dr. Seuss is made for merchandise.
Oh,
It's
no,
it just
totally
screams, buy this plush or buy this book. Pretty good deal.
And again, very tough terms up front, but understand, the studio could look at that. We could still make money. But the kicker was that one of the terms of this was that the title character would have to be played by an A-lister. And Audrey's people actually gave the studios a list. It's like, we'd like somebody that's the equivalent of Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, Robin Williams, Adam Sandler, and Jim Carrey. Now, problem going into that list is, well, first and foremost, Jack Nicholson had done makeup in 1989 for the Joker. And it's like, didn't want to do it again. So that was a non-starter. Robin Williams had done Mrs. Doubtfire back in 1993. He, spent an entire film basically in heavy makeup. Wasn't enthusiastic about this idea. Eddie Murphy, at this point was a twofer. He had done Coming to America, which had him in a lot of different makeups. And then, of course, Nutty Professor.
Oh, geez. I think he was in a ton of them just in the dinner scene alone, right?
That's it, exactly. So it's like to ask him, oh boy, another project with makeup. Adam Sandler had not done anything. I mean, I want to say Little Nicky maybe featured some makeups, but, he hadn't done anything.
More like an emo wig.
Yep. There we go. Now, Jim Carrey, of course, had done The Mask in 1994 and then followed that with Batman Forever. And the Riddler did have some pretty extreme makeup. So Jim going into this stuff, well, okay, I've done makeup. I understand makeup. He had no idea what he was about to get into, with this, but we'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, a lot of studios ponied up to try to get this project. 20th Century Fox, Paramount, New Line, and Universal all put in bids. Kind of interesting bend on the story, though, Eric. John Hughes, the director of Home Alone, having made all that money with the two Home Alone films, was like, maybe I should try another holiday film. But in the end, Universal won out, and there's a lot of folks who actually point to the fact that, Audrey had already been in business with them doing Islands of Adventure and was comfortable working with the Universal folks. And so it's like, all right, that's what we're going to do. But here's the thing, Eric. This was a giant film. That when The Grinch was in production at Universal and started shooting September of 1999, there were no less than 6 sound stages on the lower lot being used. Stage 12, stage 27, 28, 29, 31, and 36. For example, Stage 28 all by itself housed the Grinch's cave. And then, but that's just the inside of the cave, where stage 27 was actually the top of Mount Crumpet. And then stage 12 was the town set for Whoville. I mean, the makeup. Oh my God. That when Jim Carrey started on this show, and they brought in makeup master Rick Baker, who, by the way, has won 6 Academy Awards for his makeup work. And one of the projects that he won for was The Grinch Stole Christmas, because it was such an amazing full suit. But it was, a full body suit made of yak fur that Jim Carrey had to wear.
They found a green yak, huh?
Yeah. The yellow contact lenses that he had to have in the entire time. When they initially started making the movie, again in September of 99, it would take Carrey 9 hours to be fully made up. He would arrive at the studio at 5:00, in the morning, and they weren't able to get him on set till like 2:00 in the afternoon.
That sounds completely awful. I mean, they were like, all right, you need to be the Grinch. You're going to really embody this. And the way we can do this is 9 hours of makeup. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No wonder he hated Christmas.
Well, and now the interesting thing is, over time, they got that time down to 2.5 hours. But, like for the first 2 weeks of production, in fact, Ron Howard, who got, hired to direct this film, was kind of despairing. It's like, in 2 weeks, we've gotten the equivalent of 3 days worth of footage, because it just, it takes so long to get Jim into makeup. And then, by 5 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we have to start to get him out, so he can go home and rest. And it was so terrible. Brian Glazier, Ron Howard's longtime partner, saw how Jim Carrey was suffering wearing this outfit. Carrey described being made up as the Grinch as being buried alive. Just sort of that. That's how extensive it was. But Brian, to try to help Jim get through the experience, actually went out and found an old military guy who taught Jim techniques that men who were tortured by the Viet Cong back in the 60s, you used to survive that experience, sort of inner breathing exercises and distraction techniques and that sort of thing. And
oh my goodness.
But and Ron did what he could to show solidarity. I mean, for example, one day Carrey showed up on set, and Ron Howard behind the camera is wearing the full Grinch makeup. It's just sort of like, I'm going to do what you do, Jim. I'm going to do my job today dressed as the Grinch. And to distract him, to give him treats during, like one day Jim Carrey shows up on the set, and Ron Howard brings onto the set Don Knotts. And that was because Jim Carrey loved Don Knotts. And so, the entire time, whenever, they were off camera, there was Jim Carrey talking with Don Knotts about, well, what was it like to shoot the Andy Griffith Show? What was it like to shoot the Apple Dumpling Gang? And even Rick Baker, the head of makeup, got in on this. Was trying to make this bearable, this fun for Jim Carrey. So you have to understand that starting in October of 1999, Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, start shooting also on the Universal lot. And Eric, there is this flat out wonderful photo of one day Rick Baker brings Eddie Murphy over to the set of the Grinch in full Sherman Klump makeup. And so so there is this great photo of Rick Baker standing between his two creations, and they're both eyeballing each other because it's like, who's wearing the most painful makeup? It's pal, look at the outfit I'm wearing, and I got to, and as you mentioned, I got to do this 6 other times around a dining room table.
They're trading war stories, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, geez.
But in the end, it did pay off. Like I said, ridiculously high gross. A favorite film today. But at the same time, just to bring this full circle, those poor Who's that I saw in Florida, in the 80-degree weather, and the gentleman, who dresses as the Grinch, the team member who does the breakfast at Circus McGurkus, and also does the stage show, the Grinchmas live on stage, 5 and 6 times a day. I was lucky enough to be there to watch the folks at Universal Florida, the team that does the makeup there, and it's the Rick Baker appliances, 25 years later, being, applied to these, because that's the look of this show. And, it's not a question of, okay, we're in front of cameras, 3 or 4 hours a day. It's like your entire shift, your 8 hours, and you got to feel for these people. I mean, they do great work, and just enjoy that they will, to endure the pain so we can have a fun holiday.
Right. I think that Jim Carrey deserves a lot, because he kind of created that character, which there's hour-long lines to wait and see this character now. And it is just like you see these, gentlemen playing the character, and it's like, oh, that is like meeting a Jim Carrey. It's very, very, over the top and witty, and they're very clever. So yeah, I mean, and I think the Grinch is the highlight of Universal's, holiday season. So,
one quick question though. Have you seen the Illuminations Grinch movie with Benedict Cumberbatch as the voice of the Grinch?
I have seen, so I've definitely been in the room when it's been on, and I've watched bits and pieces, but I don't think I ever saw it all the way through. It's a different take though, right?
Well,
I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch is totally different than Jim Carrey.
Well, what's so funny is that the story, at least it was told to me, is the folks at Illuminations, when they decided to make their animated version of this Dr. Seuss story, they decided, we really need to go back to what the holiday special was, and remember, they had such a distinctive voice with Boris Karloff. And so they hire Benedict Cumberbatch, figuring, this wonderful English actor, who's going to do an amazing job and give us, just like Boris Karloff. And they get Benedict Cumberbatch in the booth, and it's like, why are you doing an American accent? and it's like, well, this is an American fairy tale, isn't it? I mean, Dr. Seuss, very American. And, I was thinking I wanted this to be different from Jim Carrey and from Boris Karloff. So my Grinch is going to be American. And it was like, oh, okay. So
well, there you go.
Should
have asked them that a little bit earlier.
There we go. Maybe should have brought that up a little earlier. But
I will tell you, I do enjoy a Grinch regardless. I think it is a great time, and thanks for bringing that story to us.
No.
Along with everything you saw. And I mean, I think over the next couple episodes, we're going to do more deep dives into what you saw. Parks.
Definitely. And remember,
on the floor at IAAPA.
Yep. Yeah. And likewise again, you, me, and Lauren will sit down and talk about Epic, what you saw on the, that first annual pass holder day, and what I saw because I was at IAAPA. One final story here before we go, folks. Okay, so it's Jim Schul and I. We're 2 old white guys in the Florida heat after several days at IAAPA, and we have wandered into Burke, and we are sitting in an outdoor dining area, just sort of regrouping. In fact, we're waiting to catch a performance of the untamable dragon. And, so while I'm sitting there, a dad with a little girl next to me goes, "Oh my God, look, a flying dragon." I turn around and a crow flies by. And I'm like, "Oh, you jerk." And just, and I go back to talking with Shul, and it said, "Daddy, look at it really is a dragon." And I turn and look back, and now I can see, oh my God, in the distance, over the parking lot, but still viewable from inside of Burke, is the dragon drone that Go-Go, saw, in fact, was it at the annual pass holder preview she saw it at night?
I felt like it was like at like a hotel or something from like a distance almost.
Okay.
Like it was something weird. It wasn't like actually, but yeah, no, they spoiler alert for the Epic ride. They talk all about it. They show it up close and it is, but like you were like, I asked, I think, were they out? And you're like, yeah, I saw them. And that is, and we know why they were out.
Well, that's
Jim. Why were they out?
That's why they were flying the drones that week because IAAPA was going on. With the notion of everybody who's anybody in themed entertainment is in Orlando that week, and if there's 1 week where you're going to get the drone off the ground and flying over Burke, so your contemporaries can talk about it, that's when you do it, and that's what happened. So anyway, I feel really lucky to get to see that, but again, we'll talk further about Epic Universe on a future show over on Patreon. But for now, I think we need to wrap up this week's episode of the Epic Universal podcast.
Absolutely. Hey, Jim, and if anybody else out there, if you have topic suggestions, feel free to send them over to us on social media. You can always head over to jimhillmedia.com, find our email addresses, and go from there. But on behalf of Jim, let's say thanks for listening. Everybody have a happy holiday weekend, and we'll be back next week.